Alabama is fascinating. You're right about that. A couple things you're overlooking is they recruit like Alabama and now add the best players from other programs.
Right.
Okay?
We can ding that one, sure.
And so that is a nice starting place because you're like, well, they're thin at safety. They added like Caleb Downs, a 5-star. They add either the best player in the country coming out of high school, or I think it's Trey Amos, the corner that comes over from Louisiana, or like the best corner prospect in the portal. And so Alabama should be just fine in terms of depth, in terms of talent. I think it's an identity thing. I think it's an idea of teams catching up in the SEC and matching that talent on certain levels. You see what A&M did a couple of years ago with their all-time recruiting class, and what LSU is doing with both the portal and bringing in a better coach. Okay, so Brian Kelly better than what Ed Orgeron was the last couple years at LSU. Obviously, 2019 is unimpeachable for LSU. So I think there's a lot going on. And obviously, Georgia ascending to where they have gotten. Hey, real quick, thanks for stopping by. Now would be a terrific time to subscribe to the Solid Verbal for college football videos all season long. I think it's foolish to look at Alabama as a team coming back to merely great and saying, yeah, Tennessee can beat them 2 years in a row. I think that's a stretch, Ty. I really do. I think Alabama has weirdly become underrated, where you have latched on to, and a lot of people have latched on to, I'm sure I have to a certain degree. It was like, well, they're bringing in Tommy Rees. What must they think about the quarterbacks on the roster? Or not Tommy Rees, but what's his name?
Tyler Buchner.
Tyler Buchner, excuse me, with Tommy Rees. Alabama and what they do schematically on offense, going back to, I think, a more efficient route where they do count on the rushing attack and tight ends and not necessarily playing with the speed they were playing with a few years ago with Sark and Loxley and Gaddis. That's fascinating to me. If it's Jalen Milroe, great. He is a rushing attack himself. He's a rushing threat himself. The receivers are good. Jermaine Burton is still there. They're good. They're just not otherworldly, dramatically insane like they were a few years ago. They're going to be very good. They have a good amount of offensive line experience that came together, an offensive line that came together nicely last year after a really sloppy performance against Texas. I think they're going to be very good on offense, and I think they're still going to be terrific on defense. Now, you bring up the linebackers. Yeah, I think it's a point of concern. Linebackers matter less when the defensive line can do what it was doing last year at times. No Will Anderson, Dallas Turner's still there. Tim Smith is super promising on the inside. There's a lot to like about a lot of pieces about Alabama's defense. Kool-Aid McKinstry's still there at cornerback, right? Opposite Trey Amos.
Right.
So I'm not crazy concerned. Now, Kevin Steele is a defensive coordinator, a new defensive coordinator, new old defensive coordinator for Alabama, who's going to throw a lot of weird slurves at SEC offenses. If you remember, who was the Colorado Rockies expansion team who threw the slurve? That's where I was first introduced to it. That's what Kevin Steele does. He was the one defensive coordinator who did make LSU's 2019 offense look relatively mortal. And so he comes over for Miami where it just wasn't a fit. He's going to do fun, weird things with this Alabama defense if he still has, baseball reference, his fastball as the defensive coordinator. He was going to be Maryland's defensive coordinator last year, so who knows? I'm in on Alabama. I'm in on Alabama, at least within the context of saying, it's still better than Tennessee. You give me Nick Saban versus Joe Milton, I'm going to dig Nick Saban. So,
well, listen, I think that's totally fair.
Yeah.
My I think, source of hesitation with Alabama is not the defense, because the defense is always good.
Yeah.
I'm fooling myself if I say, oh, well, the secondary has questions, therefore Tennessee is going to beat them.
Yeah.
I think my biggest point of uncertainty with Alabama is the quarterback thing. And it's not new. If you're following college football through the preseason, you kind of know where they're at. But the Tyler Buchner thing really leaves me unnerved. I think Tommy Rees is a good coordinator. I don't know if he's that good of a coordinator.
Right.
I think Tyler Buchner is very talented. I know Tyler Buchner can run, and he's very fast. And if, in fact, they're going to go the man ball route that you described at the top of the show, then that's interesting. It's interesting if it's him or if it's Jalen Milroe. Frankly, they can run that system with those guys because both of them are fleet of foot.
Right.
Where it starts to fall off a little bit for me is when we start having the conversation that we did last season, actually that we did this past spring, about Tyler Buchner. Like, he came into camp and he looks like he's a new man.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like the new man thing falls on deaf ears here. Okay.
Sure.
Because I saw what his throwing mechanics look like at his time at Notre Dame. And I don't think that's going to play at Alabama. I just don't. I don't think he's that gifted a passer. I don't think he's got that strong of an arm. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he got better with coaching and with better skill around him. I think that's possible. Sure. You can work around any kind of physical limitations when you've got Alabama's depth of talent. But I am just not sold on that quarterback position going up against a team like Tennessee or, frankly, Texas A&M, some other teams that we know can probably score, should be able to score in this SEC season, LSU,
right?
And thinking that they're going to be able to match serve to keep pace with some of those offenses that I know are going to play at tempo and score against whoever. I don't know. That to me is where it falls off for Alabama, and why I'm again going to go Tennessee.
Who do you think is more worried in those matchups, right? Do you think LSU is more worried about Alabama, or Alabama is more worried about LSU? I'd likely say LSU is more worried about Alabama. I'd likely say Tennessee, A&M. You know, all these teams at times either made Alabama look mortal for stretches last year with Bryce Young, or just full on beat them. And so I still am a believer in Alabama. I understand the concern, and I think the concern is justified because of the quarterback situation. There is just something about Nick Saban where you give him the benefit of the doubt. They'll figure it out. They'll find a way. Look, they win national championships. They get to playoffs with quarterbacks who go on to do nothing else in football. Jake Coker, Blake Sims, guys like that. It might be that kind of year for Alabama, but even still, they're handing it off to Jace McClellan, right? They're handing it off to guys like that where you're just like, I think they're going to be all right. I think they're going to find a way. They're one of 4 teams, 3 teams, 2 teams who deserve a benefit of the doubt that they're going to figure it out. And when you start with those lines and that secondary, or at least that talent ceiling in the secondary, I think they're going to be fine. I really do.